Welcome to another episode of Chad Sports Talk. My name's Chad. Take a dive on sports. And if you haven't detected by the thumbnail when you clicked on this video, it's going to be kind of like a what if scenario, kind of a thought experiment, something I could just rouse through my mind, some crazy stuff that I think of. It'll keep me up at night, but when I have free time, I kind of think of weird things like this. And it's kind of like a continuation of my last college realignment video, which, what would the Pac-12 do in order to stay relevant? Because there's been a lot of talk of the Pac-12's demise, and my picks I had for that definitely generated a few interesting comments. And this kind of is a continuation off of that video. This is what if the Power 5 goes to 16. We already know the Big Ten, SEC are doing that with the addition of USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, and Texas, respectively. They'll be sitting at 16 members, and I've kind of done a video way in the past when, Texas and Oklahoma already announced they're going to the SEC of a pod system to kind of help create a schedule, still keep a lot of regional matchups together as well as other rivalries together. And I think it is feasible when you get these conferences that size. 14, I think, is a little bit better manageable because you do a 3-5-5 model, which allows you more flexibility outside the conference for scheduling games. And then let you battle everyone at least twice a year. In a pod system, it takes you 3 years to run through everyone, which is normally about an average of when a college football athlete kind of stays anyways. So, but in this, I'll kind of go over the 16-member schools, who each conference party will grab, and what each individual pod system could look like. It helps in determining a schedule. But before I dive into all that madness, if you could, go ahead hit that thumbs up for me, especially like content provider. Really please you two guys would help this channel out. You also subscribe. Love you guys reviewing my work. I love you all for doing that. Now, me subscribe. Of course, do a dime. It helps me provide more time value for you. Now, let's just go back to what we know. We know the Big Ten, SEC are going to 16. How this is going to happen, well, that's another story for another time, possibly, and how they're going to schedule this. So they're going to create 2 8-team divisions and not face the other side, except for the conference championship game, which makes no sense, or wait for 6 years before they finally take on every single school. By that time frame, you already had 2 or 3 classes. Athletes run through there, and they'll never know Alabama versus Oklahoma conference matchup. So let's go ahead and dive into this one. I'll go ahead and rehash the SEC because this one's a little more easier to digest if you kind of break it down a certain way. Like I said, SEC went to 14. They added A&M and Missouri out of the Big 12 exodus, and now they've added Oklahoma, Texas, who will be joining in 2024. So I'll quickly developed 4 regions and then 4 pods, kind of east, west, north, and south. Very simple type of logic in this one. It kind of helped create the pairings as to get a lot of rivals together and keep it that way. So the East Pod will have South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Auburn. That way, the Florida-Georgia line can still go on in Jacksonville. The Deep South, all this rivalry still maintains. Your North will have Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Missouri. The South will consist of Alabama, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and LSU. And the West will have Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas A&M. So some of the key matchups that you look into is like Florida and Tennessee will still have their matchup. Alabama and Tennessee will have the matchup. Iron Bowl still will go. You do Missouri and Oklahoma. A big 8 clash can still happen. So there's still a lot of the cross ones together. And then, so you have each pod. So you play those 3 games. You have 3 locked opponents. and then you rotate the pairings to create your two divisional setup. Which means, let's say Oklahoma and Georgia. I think those are the top two. Let's just put Oklahoma and Georgia on top. Just put two names out there. For 2 to 3 years, if they're like the top of those divisions, they'll face off in the championship game. But 1 year, they'll be divisional opponents. Is it a bit silly? Yes, I totally get that, and it makes really no sense whatsoever, but you can actually apply that system to basketball as well to help generate your matchups to ensure that you play that 20 to 22 games a season in conference and not really affect anything. Do I think it's the best system out there? No, but it gives you something to work with. And I think with the SEC, I think SEC is one of the easier ones to come up with. Let's just head to the Big Ten. And theirs is a lot more difficult because of the geography the Big Ten is going to be. It is now going to be a coast to coast, with nothing in between Nebraska and LA. It just makes no sense. I get they're all AAU programs. USC, UCLA gets Big Ten in LA. They're they're big blue blood members of the pack. So I can see why they were added, but just don't make sense geographically. That's just me. I'm more of the geographic type of conferences. That's what I like. That's what I grew up with. Seeing these conferences getting bigger and bigger and bigger and stretching the footprint even more out just sometimes boggles my mind, but it is the status of college football nowadays. Now, with the Big Ten, I did struggle with this one a bit, trying to figure out what's the best system to kind of ensure that you don't pair a lot of the big names all together and create a super group. And we'll make sure all the pairings of the groups are at least spread out evenly to the best of the ability and just kind of go from there. So we'll start off with the East, which I think is a little more easier. You get Rutgers, Maryland, Penn State, and Ohio State. So the Penn State, Ohio State is your dominant two. Your North would consist of Michigan, Michigan State, Indiana, and Purdue. Now, Indiana and Purdue maintain their rivalry. Michigan, Michigan State maintains their. Michigan State, Indiana maintains their rivalry. The North, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska. You already know Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa all have the rivalry together. Iowa and Nebraska developed one at the end of the year. And then in the South, USC, UCLA, Illinois, Northwestern. I know that makes no damn sense. Trust me, I know this. Like I said, the Big Ten was one of the hardest ones to kind of come up with because of their footprint, where they stretched out. But it's ensured that the quote-unquote powerhouses were all grouped in the same area. So it gives Penn State a shot to possibly get in there, especially if they don't have to worry about Ohio State every year. And then you can still have those marquee matchups like Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, Purdue, Illinois, Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State. So you still have those locked matchups outside. And at least for the Big Ten, those there's not as much because the Big Ten's more geographic. I think Illinois will lose a matchup with Indiana. That will happen every 3 years, basically. But it still gives you a shot to still maintain a rivalry. And in all aspects, I think this one's probably be a little bit better in terms of trying to create a balanced system. But we'll kind of see how that one kind of plays out. Now, the next one on the list will be the ACC. Now, people ask kind of why would I go with ACC next? Well, technically they're at 15 now. Notre Dame is actually in the ACC in all but 2 sports. And one of those sports is not sponsored by the ACC, and that's hockey. We're only BC and Notre Dame play hockey, and they are in their separate conferences in that. Football is the only sport Notre Dame doesn't are fully engaged in. They still play 5 ACC teams a year. So they got their toe in there. They haven't gone full-fledged. The only time they went full-fledged is the COVID year and they had to battle Trevor Lawrence in the championship game and lost. So, with that being said, there's also a clause in the contract with Notre Dame is if they have to join a conference, they have to join the ACC. This is like a contract that's out there in the future, so they're tied to ACC for a bit. I think Notre Dame does have the money to get out of it and join the Big Ten, which I think they absolutely belong in. But in this scenario, no current members are moving conferences. So I should put that out first. But since Notre Dame's already associated with ACC, they're staying with ACC. So who do you add as the 16th member? And that was a difficult choice. Because I don't think the ACC is going for a stretch further out than, Indiana, Kentucky area. They'll probably want Cincinnati, but like I said, Cincinnati won't be leaving. West Virginia makes more sense. They're not leaving. They're not going to go down to Florida, so there's no South Florida. I don't see them going after UConn because UConn has a great spot where they're in for basketball with the Big East. Their football is atrocious right now. Well, at least they had an 8-bowl season this past season. But overall, UConn football is not the best. Their main traction is basketball. They like where they're at in the Big East, so they're not going to join the ACC. So who do you really add that kind of helps get you to a new market, per se? And the one that has had some success, both on the field and on the court. And I had two different schools I was thinking of. Memphis and Temple. Now, Memphis, I get the idea that stretches them further west. I think that further west you go, I think the less likely that's going to be. But it gives them into the deep in SEC country, which I think they might want it. They're already battling SEC everywhere else, so why not in Tennessee as well? But I think Memphis is going to eye somewhere else, so they'll probably not go ACC route. I went with Temple. Temple being there in Philadelphia, playing NFL Stadium, has had decent squads in the past. Their basketball has had some decent seasons as well, so there'll be a decent mid-card basketball amendment. Football, they're definitely in the mid-card, I think, in that aspect. That Philadelphia market, one of the largest markets in the U.S., gives them another presence up in the northeast part of the country, something where they're kind of lacking in a bit because they're more of a mid-Atlantic conference. And I think that's where the AC is going to go, either go north or south. There's not many down south that they can tackle because of, they're not going to put a third team in Florida. So that kind of takes out South Florida. So that's why I went with Temple. Immediately start renew the rivalry with Pitt. Yes, they had a rivalry with Pitt. And kind of create the groups in this one, I think a little bit easier because you're south will be Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Clemson. I'll call it the Central. You call it Carolina Conference, but that's all your Carolina schools. They want to start facing each other every single time and have them all in the same grouping. We'll do that. And you still maintain, like the Textile Bowl between Clemson and NC State. So, and, the South still has rivalry with North Carolina and Virginia. Your West could be Notre Dame, Louisville, Pitt, and Virginia Tech. But they can still keep their annual matchup with Virginia every year, so it doesn't really matter. And then the East will be Syracuse, BC, Temple, and Virginia. I think that one's kind of a no-brainer. That's just what's left of the ACC. And you can still do BC and Clemson, Virginia, Florida State. They'll have minor, rivalries going on, so you can keep that going. A nice little addition and makes the things nice and simple. So now it comes to the two Western conferences, and I'm just going to go ahead and go to the pack. As like I said, this is kind of a continuation of what I did initially when they're going. Because you already know the packs back down to 10 once USC, UCLA bolt. to go for the Big Ten. So these are the Washingtons, the Oregons, Cal, Stanford, Arizona's, Utah, and Colorado. The rumor mill is the top two candidates for expansion is San Diego State and SMU. I think these are going to be no-brainers for the Pac-12 to add these two programs, give you another school down in Southern California. You need that. You get your footprint in Texas, a recruiting hotbed for football talent. You definitely need that as well. And I said don't stop there. Go ahead, add Rice and UNLV to this mix. And I know I get slammed for adding Rice because Rice doesn't have football that's reliable. That is true. It's mainly get them in Houston and AAU. That is it. It's the same reason why I had them going in the American when they were looking to add teams. And I got blasted then for that because Rice has no football. And then I kind of backed off and brought an FAU into the mix. Well, guess what? Rice is still going to AAU because the American looked at Houston as a market they need to make sure they keep a footprint in. Even though, like I said, Rice is like number 6 in terms of attendance of getting fans to that stadium. And that stadium could hold a huge amount of people. It needs to be updated, but it can host a lot of people. You got to think, it hosted a Super Bowl. So why not? But of course, so did the old Stanford Stadium, and that one's gone to the way of the dodo. So that took the Pac to 14, and then to get them to 16, this is where things kind of get a little weird. Because other schools that I put on the program, like Boise State and Fresno State, I think one of them we added, another one's going to go somewhere else. So the one I'm taking for the Pac will be Fresno State. Gives them back to the 4 schools in California. I think something they want. So the only thing that left it out, San Jose State, but they're too close to the Bay with Stanford and Cal, so I think they get left out. Kind of keeps the Fresno State-San Jose State rivalry together. Fresno State still is a decent program themselves. Decent-sized stadium. They used to be a bowl site. The California Raisin Bowl back in the old day, the Big West versus the MAC. And the 16th member, this is where I struggled. Because I was thinking putting Boise State in here, but I put them somewhere else. You probably, process elimination, I already know where they're going. I thought about New Mexico. And I know that's another one that has nothing to do with athletics. Oh, there's why I brought in New Mexico because it gives you all 4 corners. It gives you a in-between step between, the West Coast and Texas. They already have rivalries with Arizona State, and Utah, San Diego State, UNLV, Fresno State from days of the WAC and Mountain West. So it's just a familiarity clause that they had going on. But then one of the arguments I had, I can definitely say it was an argument. Definitely with a passionate fan. And I have nothing against fans who are passionate about that. But we definitely took some jabs at each other. Some jabs that probably shouldn't have been thrown, that were thrown. And I will put UTSA in this mix. Now, no, UTSA is a very, very young program. So go ahead and throw them up to the Power 5. Might be a stretch just because of how young they are. But look what they've done from the humble beginnings to what they've done recently. Back-to-back Conference USA championships. Their fan base is growing. Now, in case you didn't see the thread I had with this individual, yes, I live in the San Antonio area. So I know that UT and A&M have a huge following out here. UTSA fan base is, like I said, is growing. Every year it gets bigger. The more success the Roadrunners have on the field, the more fans get into the Alamo Dome to back up their local team. Even the city has started to embrace UTSA. And I think once the city does that, they're going to follow passionately like they do with the Spurs. And I think that is what they're going to hang on to because that's the only football they're really going to get. XFL's out here now. Who knows how long that league's going to stick around again. This is the 3rd iteration. Or technically it's the resumption of the second iteration that's taken a 3-year hiatus. But anyways, get off track. But the fan base is here. It actually makes sense because it gives you the Holy Trinity, the pyramid of dominance are here in Texas. It'll give you Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio markets. Now for the Pac, I think this one's a little bit easier in terms of filtering the schools, because you'll have your north, which would be holding all the Northwest, so the Washingtons and Oregons. Your west is all the California programs, makes that one easy. The south, you do the Arizonas, UNLV, and Utah, and then the east would be Colorado and all the Texas programs. Pretty simple. Colorado and Utah can still have their annual Rocky Mountain clash, and you can just kind of go from there. Most aspects with terms of this conference, it's a little more easier because a lot of these rivalries are more regionalized. There's not many cross, so you can actually develop more cross ones. You might rotate those a little bit more. But I think for Pac, it's a little more easier to schedule because of how the rivalries are all set up. So it makes that one kind of easy. And then the last one on the list will be the Big 12. We already know they're kind of going more coastal. Right now they're mountain to mountain. That's the best way to put it. Because they go West Virginia to Provo, Utah, with trips down to Disneyland, or Disney World, in Orlando. As we all know, the Big 12 still has left Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Baylor, and TCU. Then they'll bring in BYU, still have West Virginia as well. They bring in BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF to get them back up to 12. Well, let's see who will pick up to get there. And I think if they go to 14, the first two schools they are knocking on the door is Boise State and Memphis. I believe these two were on the short list when they went up. Memphis kind of backed off because of the Liberty Bowl, because then the president didn't want to commit the incoming president to a situation they didn't want to be in financially. So he backed off of it. So the new president's like, no, we need to upgrade this Liberty Bowl, and then we can then make our bid for the Big 12 admission. And Boise State, being the original BCS buster, needs to be in the Power 5. Why not be in the same Power 5 in which they had battles with TCU for dominance for a while, for who's going to be the king of the BCS busters? I think that one makes the perfect sense as well. So, and then they could renew the rivalry with BYU, and everyone's happy. And then for the next two, this is where I kind of struggled, because then the pickings got a little thin. It's like, who are you going to grab? Well, the next one I think you're going to grab is South Florida. Bring back the War and I-4. Make that a conference game. Gives you Tampa, another huge market to kind of tap into. Really get you a good foothold in Florida, especially in that middle part of the state. That way you can compete with SEC and ACC. You'd be the third string, but you'd be better off than what the American is right now. So I think, that aspect, grabbing that one. So number 16, that one was more difficult because I was looking at possibly Colorado State, getting back in Colorado. But I know Colorado State's going to go without Wyoming, and you can't grab Colorado State and Wyoming. And then I don't see them grabbing San Jose State or Nevada or Utah State or nothing like that. So where else are you going to go? You look at the American, there wasn't much left there either. I don't see them go back into Texas. I gave him Tulane. I think Tulane will probably be one of the better options because you're down there in New Orleans. You're in the SEC country. Something I think they want to do because SEC is kind of robbing them, so they got to get their footprint back in there. Memphis and New Orleans are two key aspects of doing so. And you have to think what Tulane did this past season. I mean, it's not their best season overall. I mean, they had their undefeated run that barely got any notification years ago. And they have a newer facility in Benson Field. And that's the other name for it. Houston knows them, Memphis knows them, Central Florida knows them, South Florida knows them. So they have this built-in network of schools that can hate them right away. It is a AAU school as well. Gives you another clout in that aspect for the Big 12. So, you know, education-wise, they're one of the top ones. Athletically, they've had spouts where they're really good. Right now, they're really good. They'll see how well that translates. Plus, if you really want a big-time stadium to play anyone, you can just go down the road to the Superdome. There you go. And plus, Tulane is a original member of the SEC, a founding member of the SEC, mind you. So a little stab there at the SEC, and I think that kind of fit out. Now, their mixture and how I was going to do this one is kind of also kind of where, much like the Big Ten, because of the huge footprint that the Big 12 is going to find themselves in. So with this one, kind of looking at this, trying to figure out, and going, I'll go north. I'll have Boise State, BYU, and the Kansas programs all together. I know that makes no sense. Trust me, I know. Down west will be Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Baylor, and TCU. Your south, all Gulf Coast programs like Houston, Tulane, South Florida, and Central Florida. And then your east is going to be West Virginia, Cincinnati, Memphis, and Iowa State, another weird grouping. But I think some of that kind of gives some of them some new rivalries. Still keep some of the other ones in there. So you saw Farmageddon between K-State and Iowa State, one of the great rival names out there. You know, there's not much left for that particular one just because of the two programs involved. You can do annual grudge matches between Cincinnati, Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, South Florida, and someone else. I mean, you still have some, metro clashes you can do as well. And I think, in overall, it kind of allows things to kind of go forward from there. And that's, the Power 5 to 16. I know there's a lot of unusual programs out there. The Pac-12 and the Big 12, I understand. Their conferences probably not the best out there, but you also got to think the playoffs are now going to 12. So if all Power 5 programs are at 16, you're guaranteed consideration at least 2 of your members making it. That's 10 slots right there. And I think the group of 5 is going to find themselves on the outside looking in because they may not get in there because they still have that stipulation and it's got to be ranked like in the top 16 for them to be considered. And if all their power schools are gone, the only conference I think have a viability now would be the Sun Belt. But that's a topic for another time. And I think, like with this one, if they go to 16, like I said, they'll corner the playoff market, and they'll probably want to expand it again, which means there's more of these programs getting in. And some conferences won't get to 2. They'll only get to 1. And others will get like 3 or 4. But on average, each one will have 2. And I think that's what they want, give them the opportunity. And then when they find themselves like Penn State this past year, they'll be in the playoff. They would have been in the playoffs if it was at 12, and then just got stuck behind Ohio State and Michigan. And this upcoming scenario, they can only get stuck behind one of them, maybe 2, depending on the year. So I don't know. This is kind of like a part of that. I didn't want to make this video too long because I don't want to go into the group of 5 and their answer because I'm still trying to figure out. Will they go to 12 or 14 or kind of do like a hybrid between the two? What would all of them suffice? Which SCS programs get called up to backfill? But I'm still tinkering with the group of 5 members and exactly how these schools are going to coalesce and kind of grab schools. Some of them I've already come up with some good ideas. I think for them, I'm not going to make them go to 16. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they might go with the 14 route, kind of consolidate and be a little more tight-knit and kind of do the 3-5-5 model, which I think that part would be more beneficial for the group of 5, to kind of help them maintain some some good possibilities of getting a good school out there, because I think the Sun Belt in this upcoming scenario will be probably the better of the group. You know, I made some good strides for the Mountain West, because I already have their schools allocated, but it's the MAC, the American Conference USA, and I'm having trouble trying to pinpoint and fine-tune who we get added, who I think from the FCS will move up to backfill those conferences. That's been a challenge. But I'll work on that one soon, and this next will be kind of a part 2 to this type of scenario, because it is the aftermath of being rated by the Power 5. Was a group of 5 do to counter and try to make themselves relevant? Do they merge? I mean, that's another possibility I can do as well. Start merging the conferences and create, conferences that way. So I'm still running through that mind. So you can leave those suggestions down there. How do you think a group of 5 could answer? And we'll kind of look at that aspect. What do you think of the Power 5 going to 16? Do you think this is where the landscape is going, where the Power 5 get to a certain point and break away and take the 12-team format with them? That's a possibility. We could separate the levels of college football. I mean, I think it's already at 3 levels already, because you have the FBS, FCS, and the FCS abstainers. I classify them as their own separate level. So that's the Ivy League. Ivy League's their own little special entity. I think same way with the SWAC and the MEAC. They have their own special entity. But, if that happens, what does that do with the group of 5? Do they stay put, still maintain bowls, maybe have their own little playoff system? Do them and the top conferences of the FCS all merge into one big entity and go from there? I mean, there's just so many different possibilities and scenarios and different routes that you can take with this particular thought process. Because once you open one door, you go to a room and it has 5 different doors, and each one leads you to different locations. They could lead you to another 5 additional doors, and next you're nowhere close to what you thought you were going to go. It's just one of those rabbit holes you go into sometimes. You start looking for save money on something, and then watching cat videos. It's just one of those weird rabbit holes you end up going down to. You don't understand you got there. But let me know down below what you really think about this. I know this is not going to be received well by many of you. I already know that one. I already know some of the arguments that are coming. I already know those arguments. I even stated those myself. So I know there's going to be pushback, and it could be, maybe this conference should take this one, and, the difference between who's going to go to the Pac-12 and the Big 12. I understand that one. Big 10 and SEC can't do anything about. ACC, you're limited in choice. I can understand Temple or Memphis. I can go the other way on that one. I completely understand. But leave them down below. Be civil. Let's have a good conversation. Dealing with this fascinating world of conference realignments and what possibly could happen. While you're down there, make sure you share this video with your friends and family. It really helps promote the video out. You can also hit that thumbs up once again. Once you subscribe, make sure you click that bell icon and turn on notifications. Let you know next time I post any more content on my channel. And I'll see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.